US tariffs at 50% have taken effect on many Indian products starting at 9:30 this morning Indian Standard Time, doubling on the existing 25% duty as President Donald Trump sought to punish New Delhi for buying Russian oil. Trump has raised pressure on India over the energy purchases, a key source of revenue for Moscow's war in Ukraine as part of a campaign to end the conflict. But tariff exemptions remain for sectors that could be hit separately, such as pharmaceuticals and computer chips. As punitive measures kicked in, Trump took to his social media site Social and posted a picture of himself with an oil barrel. The image that went on to read, "America first and America is back." While this is the former Foreign Secretary H-1B Shringla has said that India is working to minimize the impact and that there's an opportunity to divert exports. Which are these countries, which are these markets that India should be looking at? First, listening to what H-1B Shringla had to say.
Will be at the receiving end of 50% custom duties for goods exported into the United States from India. These would impact mainly on labor-intensive products from India. We are working on minimizing the impact. One of the ways, of course, is to find alternative markets. We are we have free trade agreements with Australia, UAE, UK, a free trade agreement with the European Union. This means that we can access different markets and we would have the opportunity to divert some of our exports in that direction. I believe that we have the most comprehensive, multifaceted relationship with the United States, the one that we have more than any other country.
Exerting his strength and his power, and this is very clearly a power move. I think that this will definitely set back relations between the two countries, which has taken so many decades to rebuild, especially since the Pokhran explosion and especially since just a lot of the frosty relations that surfaced throughout the Cold War. And at this critical juncture in time where we saw so many moves being made with the G20 summit, with former President Biden's visit to India, I think that it's pretty tragic that we're now being set backwards with this tariff coming in, and it's going to impact businesses.
Exporters had come up with was the fact that they were banking on the China plus one strategy and for India to benefit from that. But what has happened instead is that orders are being taken away from India and being fed into countries like Bangladesh, like Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, Cambodia. All of these are manufacturing economies that India competes with. And when you have a tariff disadvantage against these companies, against these countries, then there's a very, very slight chance of you surviving. And that is especially given that India has a lot of is home to a lot of labor-intensive sectors. You have a lot of companies in the US that tend to source from India because labor is cheaper back here. But with these tariffs coming in, that price advantage that US buyers used to get from India, that will stop, and that has stopped, and that has resulted in the sort of order standstill that we've seen, especially in sectors like textiles, especially in gems and jewelry, in organic chemicals, in shrimp. That is also a major export product that India does to the US is shrimps, and that is something that is threatened by these 50% tariffs.
I think let's reflect on the fact that this is a real low in the India-US strategic partnership. On the one hand, you've got these 2+2 talks at the level of bureaucrats continue. These are to ensure that the military relationship and the foreign relationship continues. It remains on track. But while that may be the case, if you've got at 9:31 a.m., in other words, about half an hour back, these tariffs, the additional 25% coming into play against India, which has now been slapped by 50% tariffs by one of our closest partners, then it really does raise questions on just where the relationship stands presently. And it is a new low. I don't think there's any doubt about it. It came as an incredible surprise to India at a time when we were about to close, it appears, a trade deal with the United States, to suddenly get this punishment, as it were, for our continued import of Russian oil, something which the US earlier on never really objected to. That's what New Delhi says. That's something which is a matter of huge concern. Now, whether that relationship can be righted or not, that's unclear. But I think it's all part of a geostrategic upheaval, a churn that we are now seeing. The Prime Minister is going to be in China in the next couple of days. China really coming in now, talking about that economic relationship between the two countries, looking to fill that vacuum, which in a sense exists as a result of America and how they've treated us of late. America needs India as a bulwark against China. But if they aren't nice with us and if the relationship is going south, then where does that premise of that equation from a US standpoint actually stand? So these are larger questions. They go beyond, obviously, the financial hit that certain sectors of our economy are going to take to a larger question on the relationship. This also comes at a time when there are leading Western newspapers which are saying that, according to their sources, the Prime Minister has not taken calls from Donald Trump in the recent past. So are the two leaders who have been very close friends at one level, now they're not talking to each other. I mean, these are things that one needs to reflect on at a period of great uncertainty in the relationship between America and India.
Well, moving on, the Trump administration is planning a major overhaul of the United States H-1B visa and a green card system, signaling a shift towards wage-based immigration and merit-driven selection. The U.S. Commerce Secretary has gone on to say that he's involved in the process. This is the proposed reforms, which aim to replace the current lottery-based system with a more selective model. He went on to speak in an interview to Fox News that they're going to change the green card. We give green cards, the average American that goes on to make about $75,000 a year, but the average green card holder makes only about $66,000 a year. So therefore, questioning why we're really doing this in the first place. Let's listen in to that interview.
I'm involved in changing the H-1B program, right? We're going to change that program because that's terrible, right? We're going to change the green card. You know, we give green cards. The average American makes $75,000 a year, and the average green card recipient, $66,000. So we're taking the bottom quartile. Right. Like, why are we doing that? That's why Donald Trump is going to change it. That's the gold card that's coming. And that's we're going to start picking the best people to come into this country. It's time for that to change.
Now, meanwhile, when we talk about India, that is close to signing a $1 billion deal with US firm GE for the supply of 113 more GE engines for the light combat aircraft Tejas. Now, the negotiations are well on way, and as far as the deal is expected, that's expected to be sealed by next month. That is what we're hearing, according to our sources. Now, according to reports, US and Russian government officials have discussed several energy deals on the sidelines of negotiations this month that sought to achieve peace in Ukraine. These deals were put forward as incentives to encourage the Kremlin to agree to peace in Ukraine and for Washington to ease sanctions on Russia. And we also have Israeli protesters on Tuesday blocking highways and clamored for a ceasefire that would free hostages still in Gaza, even as Israeli leaders move forward with plans for an offensive into Gaza City they argue is needed in order to defeat Hamas. Thousands marched in Tel Aviv on Tuesday, calling for that deal to bring back the remaining hostages still being held in Gaza and to put an end to this war.
יש הצעה לעסקה על השולחן שחמאס כבר אמר לה כן. האמריקאים רוצים שהחטופים יחזרו. הרמטכ"ל אומר שחייבים ללכת עכשיו לעסקה. העם, אתם, כל אחד מכם, כאן בכיכר, במהלך היום בצמתים, בכל מקום במספרים אדירים, כולם צועקים איתנו, כולם רוצים את החטופים בבית.
These of explosions were seen over the Gaza skyline in the early hours of Wednesday morning as Israel moves forward with plans for an offensive into Gaza City. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, met with the security cabinet. This took place on the evening of Tuesday, but revealed that little of what transpired when he appeared later at that event in Jerusalem. Now, it is Netanyahu who has said that Israel will launch its Gaza City offensive while simultaneously pursuing a ceasefire, though Israel has yet to send that negotiating team to discuss a proposal on the table. He has said that the offensive is the best way to weaken Hamas and return hostages. But the families of the hostages and their supporters have been pushing back, with thousands taking to the streets to set tires ablaze, block highways, and demand a ceasefire. SpaceX Starship mega rocket roared into the skies on Tuesday on its 10th test flight following a string of explosive failures that cast doubt about its ability to realize Elon Musk's vision of colonizing Mars, and that is the dream that Elon Musk has been harboring. Now, this is, of course, putting doubts and fears as far as SpaceX Starship mega rocket that roared into the skies as far as its test flight is concerned following that string of explosive failures. South Korea and the United States militaries on Wednesday held a joint training exercise. This took place in South Korea's capital as part of the annual Freedom Shield combined exercise. The drill showed South Korean and American military personnel practicing crossing wet gaps. Troops from South Korean Army 7th Engineer Brigade and the US 2nd Infantry Division, as well as South Korea-US Combined Division's 11th Engineer Battalion, took part in those drills.
Today's training highlights the U.S.-ROCA relationship and the strengthening of our alliance. This wet gap crossing is one of the most complex engineering missions we do. And we've done it today in a realistic combat environment. I appreciate my partners with the ROCA, the 7th Engineer Brigade, for coming out here, partnering with us.
Now, a Buddhist monk famed for establishing a hospital in Thailand for people with HIV and AIDS was arrested on Tuesday over allegations of misusing donations for the project. Well, the man has been arrested on suspicion of embezzlement as well as money laundering. A second person who served as a fundraiser for the project was also detained. Now, in footage provided by the Thailand Central Investigation Bureau, both suspects were shown during their arrest with their faces blurred.
เบื้องต้นพระอลงกฎนะครับให้ความร่วมมือในการให้ข้อมูลหลายเรื่องที่เราเป็นข้อสงสัยนะครับตอนนี้ทิศอลงกฎก็กลายเป็นทิศและศึกแล้วนะครับก็ยินดีเข้าสู่กระบวนการนะครับยอมลาสิกขานะครับโดยไม่มีการบังคับขู่เข็นนะครับท่านแยกระหว่างความพระธรรมวินัยกับเรื่องกฎหมายบ้านเมือง
Now, prominent Hong Kong democracy activist and newspaper founder Jimmy Lai has arrived in a court on Wednesday. Now, Jimmy arrived for the final arguments of that high-profile trial, which has lasted over 150 days. He, at 77, is defending against charges of colluding with foreign forces in order to endanger national security and conspiring with others to issue, these publications that he faces up to life in prison if convicted under the national security law imposed by Beijing following anti-government protests in 2019. Foreign governments and political observers are closely monitoring the outcome, which is widely seen as a barometer of the city's judicial independence and press freedom as well. It's Katrina, the hurricane that is the deadliest flood event in the United States history. We're talking about in the past 25 years. But on the 29th of August, it will be the 20 years since the disaster. The storm has that crashed into the Gulf Coast and devastated coastal Mississippi and New Orleans, where people had to be rescued by boat and by helicopters from rooftops. The dangers were magnified when water breached flood walls and also submerging about 80% of New Orleans.